So there's this viral video that's been making waves, and it makes a really provocative claim about India's future. It started a huge debate online. Now, our goal here isn't to pick a side, but to actually understand the argument being made. So let's just break down the logic they present, piece by piece. Okay, so the argument kicks off with this really stark contrast. You hear all the time that India is the world's fifth largest economy, right? A huge achievement. But at the same time, the video points out its ranking in the Human Development Index is way down, over 130th. And that gap, well, it makes you ask the question they're posing. What is really going on under the hood of all that economic growth?
And right here, this is the video's central claim, its core diagnosis. The argument they make is that the issue isn't that India is poor, and it's not that it's unlucky. Nope. They say the root of the problem is a massive, widespread lack of discipline.
To back this up, the video lays out what it calls a nation of contradictions. Think about it. On one hand, you have this powerhouse, a top 5 economy. But on the other hand, something like 20% of adults can't even handle basic literacy. You've got millions of graduates, yet more than 40% of them are either unemployed or way underemployed. And that gets to the real heart of their point. India, they argue, is great at mass-producing degrees, but it's failing to produce the civic sense and basic judgment to go along with them. And the video is really clear on this next point. It's not about a lack of talent. It's not about a lack of intelligence. The argument is that India has tons of both. The real deficit, the big missing piece, according to this source, is discipline. Plain and simple.
Now, this idea of lack of discipline isn't just about big national issues. The video brings it right down to the street level. Things like cutting in line, ignoring traffic lights, all those small, everyday things. The source argues that these aren't just minor annoyances. They're symptoms of a much bigger national mindset, one that romanticizes chaos and calls it freedom.
So, to back up this pretty bold claim, the video does something interesting. It doesn't look at modern economics or political science. Instead, it goes way back to ancient philosophy. It starts digging up these old warnings from some of history's most famous thinkers, guys who were, let's just say, pretty skeptical about mass rule and the wisdom of the crowd.
First up, they bring in Socrates. And he posed this question that sounds simple on the surface, but it's really deep. Imagine you're on a ship, okay, and a massive, life-threatening storm hits. Who do you want steering that ship? Of course, the question isn't really about a boat. It's a powerful analogy for how we run a country. And the video presents you with two choices. On one side, you've got the expert captain, the one with skill, with experience, who actually knows how to get you through the storm. On the other side, you've got the popular passenger, the one who's super charming and makes a lot of great promises, telling everyone exactly what they want to hear. The video's argument is that in a democracy, we too often choose the popular passenger. And this leads to the powerful conclusion of Socrates' analogy, at least as the video presents it. From this point of view, when a society picks its leaders based on popularity instead of actual competence, that's not freedom, that's recklessness. It's a gamble that puts the entire country, the entire ship, in serious danger. Okay, so let's move on to Socrates' most famous student, Plato. The argument builds from here. Plato apparently took this idea and ran with it, warning that this endless pursuit of absolute total freedom can actually become, well, toxic. It gets to a point where people start to see any rule, any kind of authority, even basic discipline, as a form of oppression. The source then lays out this kind of slippery slope that Plato described, how this social decay actually happens. It starts small, Students start disrespecting their teachers. Then it grows. Citizens start breaking laws casually, like it's no big deal. Pretty soon, all laws start to feel optional. And at that point, any call for discipline is seen as a direct attack on your personal freedom. And this brings us to the final, shocking stage of the argument. According to the video's reading of Plato, there's a huge irony here. Once a society gets so drunk on its own freedom that it descends into chaos, the people themselves will eventually get sick of it. They'll start begging for control. They'll even welcome a dictator, a tyrant, just to get some sense of order back. All right, so that naturally leads to the next part of the video's argument. They call this section freedom's true price. It really digs into the conditions you need for a society to actually function. I mean, if unchecked freedom is as dangerous as they're claiming, then what's the alternative? What's the solution? Well, the next philosopher they bring in is Plato's student, Aristotle. And he had a much more, let's say, practical take on all this. According to the video, Aristotle's view was that freedom isn't some gift that you just hand out. Nope, it's something a population has to earn. And it can only work if the citizens are actually trained to handle that kind of responsibility. So, What does that training actually look like? Well, the video breaks down what it calls Aristotle's 4 essential pillars for a working democracy. You've got self-control, a sense of civic duty, the ability to think long-term instead of just about right now, and, finally, a deep respect for the systems and laws that keep everything from falling apart.
The video really tries to make this crystal clear with a simple comparison. It's like this. If you give freedom to a disciplined adult, what do you get? Progress, innovation. But what happens if you give that exact same freedom to an untrained, undisciplined crowd? You get chaos. So the point here isn't that freedom is bad. The point is that the outcome depends entirely on the maturity of the people who have it.
Okay, so after all of these Greek philosophers, the video brings in the ultimate reality check, Machiavelli. Now, Machiavelli wasn't about ideals. He didn't care how people should act. He was obsessed with power and how nations are actually built, for real. And his big conclusion? Good intentions are worthless. What matters are effective systems.
And here's where we get to Machiavelli's really counterintuitive argument. He says that a weak government, one that lets chaos and disorder run wild, is actually the cruelest kind of government because it lets its own people suffer. But a strict government, one that enforces order, even if it seems harsh, well, that provides the stability and safety a nation needs to become powerful and secure.
Okay, so the video has laid out this whole philosophical case, right? We've heard the warnings from Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Machiavelli. Now, it pulls all those threads together to make its final big argument about where India stands today. So let's do a super quick recap of the argument they've built. From Socrates, the warning is that uneducated voters will pick charm over substance. From Plato, the warning is that total freedom is a recipe for tyranny. From Aristotle, the message is that freedom without training is just destructive. And then Machiavelli comes in at the end to say, look, if citizens can't govern themselves, then the government has to step in and enforce order.
And all of that brings us right back to the video's main point, the one they've been hammering home from the very beginning. The argument is that history has a clear lesson for us. Civilizations aren't built on good intentions or wishful thinking. They're built on the hard, solid foundation of discipline and structure.
So there you have it. That's the argument laid out in this viral video. It definitely presents a stark choice, and it leaves all of us with a really challenging question to chew on. Is discipline, even a heavy dose of it, the unavoidable price for national progress?